Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to replace the inner tie rod on a GM vehicle. The model that we have here is a 2011 Buick Lacrosse. However, this process is the same for various other GM vehicles with a front wheel drive. The only difference is typically the part numbers and the torque specs, but the process is relatively the same. So let me show you how you can do this yourself at home. With emergency brake set, jack the vehicle up, make sure you put a good quality jack stand under there. Then we'll go ahead and remove the wheel, and it's just going to be a 22 mil. Now with the wheel removed, we now have access to our tie rod here. So here's the inner and here's the outer. So we'll start by first breaking this nut loose here, and this is just going to be a 24 mil. So once that's broke loose, like that, then we'll go ahead and remove the outer tie rod. Next, we're going to be removing this 18 mil nut here, holding our tie rod in place. If you notice, mine is a fairly new setup here. It's not very old, so there's no rust. But if yours is all rusty and corroded down here, make sure you take a wire brush and clean those threads and put some PV blaster in. And most of the time when they're rusted and old, this is going to spin. So you're going to need to make sure you hold this and zip this off up here. But mine is a fairly new setup here, so mine should just come right off without that moving. Then to get this popped out of here, sometimes you can gently hit right here or hit here. You just don't want to damage any of the threads. Alright, so after hitting mine a couple times, it's not budging out of here, so I don't want to damage this because this is a new tie rod end on here. So I'm going to go ahead and use my tool here. If you're going to be replacing this outer tie rod, just get rough down here and pound up and it will just pop out of there. But if you're going to be reusing it, just make sure you don't damage the threads down there. Alright, so after that's released, now we can remove the tie rod end. What you need to do here is just make sure you count how many threads you take this off, because we're going to re-zip this back on there when we're done here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So roughly 20 turns to take that off. Then we'll spray a little PV blaster on this. Then we'll remove that 24 mil as well. So take a 15 here to hold that, and come down here with our 24. And depending on how rusty yours is, it might not come off that easy, but as long as you hold it in place back here, you should be able to get it off. Next, take your hose clamp pliers or just your regular pliers and take this clamp off here, holding the boot in place. Then the clamp on the back is just going to be one of these ear nose clamps, and what you need to do is just take a screwdriver in there, just go in there and just pry that out, then that boot should slide right out. Alright, so there we can feel that we release that clamp in the back. So then this thing should slide right out of here. And sometimes those boots get stuck back there. What I found useful over the years is this GEARWRENCH hose removal tool, and you can basically get this behind that clamp and push back, then it pops that seal loose. Alright, so there I can feel the seal is broke loose. And again, our boot was all tore up here, and that's why we're replacing this. But just be kind of gentle if you're going to be replacing the boot here. Alright, so now to get our old one removed, I'll show you here on our new one. And this is just the GM part number that I have here on this Lacrosse. You're going to notice these flat pieces here. Sometimes on some vehicles you can get an open end or something in there in order to get those removed. With that said, a lot of times this inner tie rod tool is what you're going to need in order to get it in here. If you don't have one of these, you can always rent these from your local auto parts store for free. And what this is going to do here, you're going to find your size. So then once you find your size, on this one it looks like it's 1 7/16. So then how this works is you'll have this inserted in there. You're going to take your tool, it'll slide in place like that. Then you're going to notice these little notches on both sides. It'll simply get inserted down in there. Then you'll rotate your collar like that and lock it in place. Then you'll use your ratchet over here and you'll simply twist it off. Alright, so we'll take this and we'll set this in place. Then take your tool and line it up with those notches. Then once you have it inserted in there, lock the collar and insert our ratchet. You're probably going to need a breaker bar on the end of this because sometimes these are on here pretty tight, but eventually it should loosen up. Alright, so now that we got it loosened up, we should be able to take this off. Then we'll take our new one and just make sure that yellow spacer is still in place back there because that needs to be installed as well. And we'll first just hand tighten this to make sure it goes on there correctly. Alright, so once we got it hand tightened on there, we'll put our tool back on there, then we'll torque it to 74 foot-pounds. Alright, so there was our 74. So then we'll go ahead and release our tool. Then reach back in there and take that spacer and push it all the way flush like that so it clips in place like that. Moving on to installing our boot. Again, I'm using the GM part number here. You're going to notice you're going to have a couple of these hose clamps. So this one here is going to go up front here. We need to make sure we put a little of that grease right here. Then on the back, you're going to have another one of these. And if you don't have one of these, you can use any clamp or even zip ties sometimes, and a pinch will work as well. But this is going to slide in over there. Then you're going to take one of these ear nose pliers and you're going to crimp it down like that. Now up in there, it's hard to get some of these pliers up in there, but this Knipex one I have here, as you notice there, it has a connection there and here, so you can use it like this in there and it makes it a lot easier. So this comes in handy. I've used it a handful of times over the last couple of years. It works great. But again, if you don't have one of these or this clamp, you can put any clamp in there. Just make sure it's on there tight. All right, so with our clamp in place here, and just kind of position that in an area where you can get your pliers in there. Then we'll slide this in place. And just make sure you get it pushed all the way back in there so it gets over that lip on the steering rack. Then once you got that seated, then we'll go ahead and we'll tighten up that clamp. Alright, so once you get that tightened up, just verify that it's fully seated back there. We'll go ahead and put the hose clamp up front here as well. And we'll go ahead and we'll install the tie rod end. So first thread our new nut back on there. Then take our tie rod in, and if you remember when we removed it, it was 20 turns, so we're going to do 20 turns and put it back on. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So we'll tighten up that jam nut. Then we'll insert it back over here. Then we'll install the nut down here. And this is a one-time use only. Here is the GM part number, because these are torque to yield nuts. Then we're going to torque this to 26 foot-pounds plus an additional 30 degrees. Alright, so there was the 26. Then the additional 30 degrees. Then we'll go ahead and snug this back up as well. Alright, so then after you get that snugged up, just verify everything looks good here. Then the last thing you need to do is you need to make sure you get this vehicle aligned. And the reason you need to do that, by us removing these tie rods, the inner and the outer, by putting it back on there the same amount of threads that came off and put it on, we're just getting it back into the rough ballpark so you can drive the vehicle down the road. You still want to make sure you get it aligned to make sure you get these wheels perfectly aligned the way they were before. Then once you're done with that, then you've completed your job here. So hopefully this helped you out. If it did, please give me the thumbs up. If you're interested in more content like this, please hit that subscribe. But again, I hope this helped you out, and thanks for watching.